So I had to do a musical intro. We are right now in the Great Palace of Versailles. But unfortunately yesterday, a very great woman passed away. She was one of the longest reigning monarchs in all of history, 70 years. Only bested by a monarch that actually built this palace, King Louis XIV, who ruled for 72 years. But I wanted to come here to Versailles in order to pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth II, who passed at the age of 96 years old after ruling for 70 years. But why am I here at the Palace of Versailles? Well, obviously this is a French palace, and then of course there was a very bloody series of revolutions that destroyed the monarchy over here, of course. But this was the palace that Queen Elizabeth visited 3 times. 3 whole times. She was the world leader who visited this palace the most. So this is the Palace of Versailles, about 20 kilometers away from Paris. And she came here for 3 distinct years. I'm gonna pop up the years right now. 1948, 1957, and 1972. Those were the 3 years she came here, and I have a very good video to show you before we start walking the palace grounds. Here is the events that transpired. She came here in 1948, first when she was just merely a princess. She was the princess in basically English history who went all around the world. She was the most well-traveled princess in all of English history. She went to basically every part of the empire of Britain at that time, and also foreign countries like France. And then she came back in 1957. It was her first official visit to France as Queen Elizabeth II. And then in 1972, she came over with Charles de Gaulle, who was the prime minister and the war hero of France and its liberation from the Vichy government and the Germans back in World War II. And it was a huge event every time she came. You can see that there's lots of people all around cheering, crowds. Here she's getting off the airplane right now, meeting up the other French dignitaries. And the video runs for a little bit longer. So as we're seeing a little bit snippet of the video, you're seeing it over here. I'm gonna walk inside. Now there might not be cell phone reception inside. I'm crossing fingers. If the cell phone reception drops, I may try to do one other one if I can find steady reception in some of the rooms. And they might ask me to take off the gimbal, so if I have to go handheld, I will. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's walk inside.
says President. Oh, thank you, Nibu, for the clarification. Sorry, my mistake. I said Prime Minister. President Charles de Gaulle. With the changing of titles, you know, because right now it's Prime Minister, but yeah, thank you, Nibu, for clarifying that it was President at the time. So that was a lavish dinner she attended in 1972. I actually have the menu. After the video stops playing, I'll pull up the menu. Lavish dinner. It was actually for sale for, they actually had a copy for sale for like 600 euro. And I can't barely read what it says. It's really hard to make it out. They didn't have the highest quality image. Nibu says on that video, Georges Pompidou was with her as well. Yes, Georges Pompidou. De Gaulle appeared briefly in that video. But yeah, Pompidou was there as well. And then there was another president or prime minister in 1948. The Palace of Versailles is one of the biggest. It's definitely the most famous one. And then all right, everyone, let me know if you hear me. There is very choppy cell phone reception inside here. It makes it a bit difficult to live stream. But so this started as a hunting lodge back in the reign of King Louis XIII, 20 kilometers away from Paris. But by the time King Louis XIV came into power, he decided to make this into his grand palace. Cell phone reception. Let's continue walking. Excusez-moi. Excusez-moi. Don't block the doorway. There's a video here, and it's so funny to see so many people blocking the doorway. So here's the Palace of Versailles from above. as depicted back between about 1668. Wow, they were already starting to construct very fast. So 16, which in French they call chateau, and it seems by 1668 they already had a few buildings already constructed. Of course, the palace now is way bigger, way more massive. And these are just the gardens and how they're beginning. The gardens are huge. In order to walk around the entire garden, it's about 5.7 kilometers just to walk around that canal, which ended up becoming much longer. So later today, we're gonna actually see the gardens, so stay tuned. That's for the 3 p.m. show, French time. We'll make our way to the Hall of Mirrors. Oh my! But it isn't. Teresa, nice to see you. Welcome, Ron. Welcome, Kay. Welcome, Katrina. RJ, Janice, ¿cómo está? Nebul, bonjour. Lorraine, hello. Michelle says, I want to say farewell to my queen these next 10 days of mourning to remember her. Yeah, and a great sense of humor. Yeah, I think she came here 3 times, but I think she will have enjoyed roaming wild through the gardens of Versailles. Teresa asks, what am I doing? I'm set to fly out for France. France is the final stop of this tour. No decoration on the ceilings. EP, thank you so much for 50 stars. Mater, nice to see you here. So 3 kings lived here. Louis the 13th, Louis the 14th, and Louis the 15th. Actually, all the way to the 16th. 13th wasn't officially here, so he was hunting here. So 4 kings were in Versailles, 3 of them were in the palace. Susie says they must have so much space, so much big families. So the palace wasn't only for the royal family and maybe their staff. No, the actual center of government was right here, where we're standing right now. So basically Louis XIV was tired of the overcrowdedness of Paris. And Paris, of course, was prone to uprisings. Of course, they were small. But also cholera, which was very bad, and disease. So there was a lot of cholera outbreaks that was happening also at that time. So he wanted to leave the government with them. So this was the center of government. but over 7,000 courtiers, which were nobility, plus a lot of staff for them, plus governmental officials. It was nearly 10,000 people that lived at this palace at one time during his reign. Here is Louis XIV, the Sun King. That was his nickname, the Sun King. Apparently he was very short. But apparently he was 5'3", but he wore high heels, which was very normal for men. If you see, a lot of the men actually wear high heels, the women don't. So when people say, oh, high heels is something very feminine, it used to be masculine. So you can see all the men used to wear high heels. It was at first a practical use for riding horses, but then just became the fashion. And apparently he wore it too. Sure, if anyone can confirm, that's what I heard from a few different podcasts and articles. Huge painting, a lot of negative space. That's pretty rare at that time. They really wanted to show the grandeur of the gardens. Ron says, do you think those clothes will get back in fashion? So, high heels, who knows what will happen in terms of high heels. I don't think the fashion per se, but one game changer here in the Palace of Versailles in terms of fashion was for women. I'm going to pop up the image if I have it. I hope I have the image. This painting might be somewhere around here as well. Oh no, I don't have the image. I don't have it right now with me, but it's a painting of Marie Antoinette, who was the wife of King Louis XVI, the last one to live in this palace of the royalty, was wearing a chemise garment. Chemise usually was associated with undergarments or with night garments, but she wore it for a painting as if it were a day garment. And that actually became quite a revolution. Women, first royalty, all wanted to wear chemise, which is this very light, frilly material. That actually kind of passed down through the generations, and chemise continued to be popular only until the 1920s or 30s when it was incorporated into women's sportswear. So chemise actually became big all the way in the 1920s, 30s, 40s because of Marie Antoinette 200 years before. And here she is. She's not wearing chemise in this one, but here she is. Oleg says, this is too much empty space. No, up to 10,000 people were here. So it wouldn't really be that empty. Actually, it would be rather hectic. It's not quite as an empty palace as Romania's grand palaces. That palace, I think, is the biggest one in Europe. And that one was empty. That's for sure. Naboo says that's almost a city. It basically is. I was shocked when I read that number. Ah. So he was one of the guys after all those revolutions. Of course, he was the last emperor of France. Actually, find this guy reflects a lot of a new monarch that's about to take power. I don't know if anyone knows the connection between Napoleon III and King Charles III, aside from them both being the third. There is a very interesting connection between those two guys. I know King Charles is now the new King of England. He'll be officiated very soon, but basically in English law, the moment a monarch dies, the next in line of succession already automatically takes the title. Susie says similar hair. You know, they kind of do have similar hair, but that's not what I was thinking. It's not really aesthetic. But yeah, you're right, they kind of do have similar hair. So Napoleon III was known for rebuilding Paris. He hired George Eugen Haussmann to basically level a gigantic portion of Paris, make grand boulevards, and a beautiful new city. One of the main reasons was, of course, military. He wanted to hold on to power. Also for defense, he didn't want to repeat of the invasions that happened from the Prussian armies, which unfortunately led to his downfall once again. And for the harmony of the city, he wanted to improve the quality of life of the city. He wanted to prevent disease and poverty and many issues that were afflicting the city of Paris back then. It was one of the main reasons Louis XIV even built this palace in the first place. So he's the one who rebuilt Paris, along with his entire team. So I was reading about King Charles III, formerly Prince Charles, and he built his own city. Prince Charles built his own city in the middle of England. I forgot the name of it. It starts with a P. It's still fairly obscure because it's small, but he has a lot of thoughts on building cities. He wants to build cities that are actually livable. He's a guy who's actually ranted against modern architecture, especially bland modern architecture. And he decided to build his own city with gardens because he also loves gardening. And people love living there. There's a lot of interviews with people who live there, and they love it. And that's fascinating. So I think Napoleon III and now King Charles III are going to be one of the few urbanist kings who also love building cities. And hopefully King Charles III won't have too much power, or any power at all, but who knows, maybe he'll be able to inspire. Who knows? Another King Louis XIV. No boy. Anonymous student, as this year was Marie Antoinette with Kristen Dunst. So Marie Antoinette, Kristen Dunst played Marie Antoinette in the movie Marie Antoinette, directed by Sofia Coppola. I've never seen it. Actually, still haven't seen it yet. I don't like Sofia Coppola's movies too much, to be frank. I actually don't even like her father's movies too much either. But people do love them, and they are praised. So let me know if you've seen Marie Antoinette. Thank you so much, Robert. That was the name of the city. Thank you so much. Poundbury. Thank you so much, Robert. Poundbury was the city built by formerly Prince Charles III, now formerly Prince Charles, now King Charles III. I think that's awesome. World leader. I think that's the coolest thing ever. This is a beautiful painting. Wow. Susie says Prince Charles was ahead of his time. He was indeed ahead of his time significantly. He had a lot of thoughts about building better walkable cities. He also had a lot of thoughts about how bland architecture can actually be detrimental to the development of our cities. And I think he was pretty head on. Bland architecture has led to some very empty spots in cities. He also talked a lot about the need for more greenery. And so he says thoughts about healthy food. Yeah. So the palace is accessible. There's a gentleman right now using the elevator on a wheelchair. King Louis XIV again. Wow. Velvet.
Eu teve a Revolução Girondina. I think this might be Louis XIII. Maybe. Kind of looks like him. So Louis XIII was the guy who built the hunting lodge back in 1623. I can't tell if that's him, and they have here a marker. Oh no, it seems to be related to him. This is King Louis II. Wow. Look at the frames of the paintings. That's me. Yeah, let me zoom in. Michelle says maybe the dandy frilly shirts and high for guys. Who knows? Who knows? Frilly shirts are coming back. They are. Long hair is trying to make a comeback. Nebu says, who was King Louis II? I don't know too much about him, but seems definitely related to the third. Oh, actually, obviously, he's the father of the third. Nebu says, who was Louis XIII? King who built the hunting lodge here in Versailles. It was the first French royalty that really started hanging out in Versailles a lot. It was the 14 who made this the center of government and power. Goder says the kings look more. I don't think height was really in the Louis bloodline. Leslie says only one in my family has been to Versailles, so please take us on the deluxe tour. I'll do my best. Depends on cell-phone reception. We're definitely gonna see the whole mirrors. There's one wing that doesn't have any cell phone reception, unfortunately. I don't think these are all kings, so some of them are like right here in the center, but not all of them. They might be nobles. You can find all the names. Yeah, they're nobles, dignitaries, ambassadors. Ooh, plates. Tony says that you're going to the Louvre. I already have 3 videos, no, 4, 5 videos on the Louvre. Search Louvre Urbanist and you'll see them. Hey Colleen, nice to see you here. Welcome. I have a baby photo like that, and it's one that I'd rather not show to anyone. So right now the smell is rather pleasant right here, of course. But that wasn't the case back during the reign of King Louis XIV. Let's see if this is at late age. Oh no, that's Philippe. Leslie says it's a miracle survived World War II. Indeed it is. I'm kind of shocked. Honestly, I don't think this was of any strategical value for the Germans to attack. I don't think the French were using this or any allies were using this for any strategic reasons. I'm not sure about Versailles' location, but since it's so close to Paris, I assume it really wasn't being used. Bobby says, is there a painting of Napoleon? There is. Unfortunately, that's the exact area where there's no cell phone reception. Otherwise, I would love to show it to you. It's on the opposite wing. But yeah, one of the bigger paintings of Napoleon when he was crowned emperor is on the opposite wing. So here's King Louis XIV. Let's see if we can get a good view of him. You see him right here. You might think, oh, this guy looks rather regal. Yeah, okay. He's dressed very nicely. Okay, his hair seems to be proper order. Okay, okay. You know, he has a nice rouge to his skin, rosy cheeks. Okay. But this man probably smelled very foul. Because he was deathly afraid of water. He did not want to go into water. He did not want to submerge into water. He did not want to ever touch water with his hands. He never took a bath. He never took a shower. He never took a dip into the fountains. The man was deathly afraid of water. He thought water was a transmitter of disease, which in some cases it is, but not in all cases. And he avoided baths at all costs. He also wore makeup that would deteriorate his skin. Women suffer from this a little bit more, but men as well. So they used some type of makeup that would give them this kind of white complexion, even complexion, but that would burn. Would have an acidic component that would burn your skin. So they would have to put more makeup and more rouge and more makeup and more rouge in order to compensate. Sores would appear on their bodies, and King Louis XIV was not immune to this. Hair as well, very poor condition. Hair would be natty, filled with dandruff, and who knows, it might even have lice. But another issue was bathrooms. Since there was no running water in Versailles, there was no bathrooms, proper bathrooms. There were only buckets. Maybe one or two toilets, but there really wasn't that many toilets for an entire palace of up to 10,000 people. So people defecated wherever they could. There might be the buckets, and the buckets would be left in the palace. So you would have the smell of feces, of piss, of bad body odor, because no one took a bath, including the king himself, and immense amounts of perfume. So much perfume in order to cover all that terrible, horrible stench. But if anyone knows what happens when you try to perfume a bathroom after you've, done a very smelly number 2, it really doesn't work. It smells just like a fruity number 2. It just doesn't work. It's a bad combination. Luckily nowadays we have like those air sprays that actually stop odors. But before then it was just perfume. It only masked the odor, did not take it away. So after a while you will have that terrible combination. Oh, and do you guys want to know one more detail? Because it kind of gets crazy, especially looking at him right here. Can you tell me something about his face? People who are probably dentists. I have a dentist that tunes in, Thomas. Maybe he'll tune in at some point. Shout out to Thomas, he's a dentist. He might be able to recognize exactly what the issue is here. I already told you about the skin. I already told you about the hair. So one way you can tell is that his cheeks are sagging significantly, his neck as well, and that might be a sign of aging. Of course, it's a sign of aging, but it's more than really is normal. The reason for that is he had no teeth at all. The man was toothless. It was terrible because he could only eat very soft foods, or his staff had to pre-chew it for him. And the reason he lost all that teeth was because of the poor hygiene. So all that bone loss, that's why they probably were more kind when they painted him, but yeah, his face wasn't in the best shape because no teeth. And no, I don't think dentures, I'm not sure if he had dentures, but no teeth. So when people say, oh, I'm so jealous of those royals. Oh, I wish I could be a royal. Be careful what you wish for. Even today's day. Cases is getting worse, yeah. Burning skin, natty hair. Is that the term? Sometimes hair is, I don't want to say the wrong term, but really crumbled up hair. Sometimes balding because of all the makeup that they would use that would actually burn into their scalp and cause hair loss. There was also other stuff that they used that would cause hair loss, and that's one of the reasons they wore wigs. And no teeth. So, yeah, you would think that the Palace of Versailles is this place of utter glory and glamour. But no, it was a super smelly toilet. With lavish dance parties, but it was super smelly. Gwen says pre-chew, yeah, it's very sad, very sad. Yes, yeah, you could say this story is rather crappy. Can't get any worse than Katrina. Oh, if you consider about Marie Antoinette,
and her husband, Louis XVI, losing their head. Yeah, it can get worse. It can get worse. They both lost their heads in a very, very gruesome way, which is very sad. Oh, look at this. Tony says, watch out for pocket thieves. Yes, Tony. Yeah, I'm always very aware. Here's the chapel, the Grand Chapel, which we were unable to see downstairs.
Here in Versailles. Imagine, we are desperate. We are fighting, we are jealous, we want some power, we want to be recognized. We don't know how to react.
Susie says, I hope they kept those windows.
Still in function.
At least. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a good question. I hope they did. What about the... I heard about something along those lines. Very prevalent. And they would like have games involving lice that Marie Antoinette would play with her children. I forgot what it was, but I just told you the tip of the story. There's a few documentaries. There's one documentary specifically that talks about the dirty history of Versailles. It gets much more in detail, involving terrible. And there's no central heating here. And there's fireplaces, but they weren't sufficient enough, so you can windows. Let me know if you see me again. Bad service wants to go more towards the center of the building. So I'm going to stick right by the windows. Chris says, do you already go to the gardens? I need some fresh air. 3 p.m. Stay tuned. Oh my God. Susie says, at least they have pretty ceilings. Yeah, at least. I'm not sure if it makes up for the terrible stench, but at least, yeah. I mean, I'd rather have teeth, to be honest. It's nice. It's rather nice to have teeth. It's rather nice to take a shower. I like it. So I don't need a pretty ceiling if that is the trade-off. I'm okay. Anthony says this is a Henry Miller style attitude to France. Ooh, that's an interesting analogy. Why you say that, Anthony? Henry Miller, of course, American writer who was here in France. Henry Miller wrote Tropics of Cancer, semi-erotic novel that was banned in many places, actually. He was a lover of Anais Nin. Yeah, why do you say that? That's an interesting interesting analogy, Anthony. People might be asking is, or might be thinking is, they didn't know any better. You know, this was the 1700s, late 1600s, early 1700s. Hygiene wasn't really that normal. It was. The Romans had baths and running water systems 2,000 years ago. Certain Greek areas of ancient Greece also had running water and baths and showers. And it was fairly normal to take a shower. And this is that wasn't unknown in the 1700s in Europe. It's just King Louis XIV specifically had a phobia with running water. But a lot of other people had a similar phobia, or maybe a little bit less, because of the terrible strife with cholera and then smallpox. Things that would, especially cholera, you would get from water, unfortunately. And then if you were in certain areas of Europe, mosquitoes as well. So there was a lot of, trepidation with using water to cleanse yourself. Also, it was hard to find running water because Europe and certain places were very poor. So these guys were able to live lavishly, and they still didn't spend the money to have a running water system. You can only imagine the most poor areas of France during that time that eventually led to the revolution, because couldn't even afford bread. So yeah, they didn't have running water back then. So that's why it was tough for them to even take a bath. Even though the technology was there, even though geographically it was easy, not easy, but doable to provide running water. So that was the circumstances back then. Ron says, how about drinking water? That's a great question. I don't know for sure, but if I were to make an educated guess, I would say they were depending more on alcohol than drinking water. And it's cool, it's looking foggy down there. It's gonna rain. Oh my god, it's already raining. It's gonna be a rainy walk through the gardens. I hope you're ready. Chris says, John D. Rockefeller helped preserve Versailles, gave 9 million francs to the restoration. Yeah, he gave a big sum of money, especially at that time, to help restore Versailles. John D. Rockefeller did many great things in restoring some of the greatest pieces of architecture in the world. Of these places. So why is there a big line? Because I have a feeling we're getting close to the Hall of Mirrors. Berger says most of the water coming into Versailles was used for fountains. Oh yeah, so they did build water pipes, but yeah, they were used for fountains. They didn't build water pipes for the interior. Wow. Tours right now.
Example from Middle East, from Mesopotamia, in Iraq today, okay? We can see the Kodono birds and Semiramis, and they are reflecting the gardens of the hanging gardens of Babylon. Hanging gardens.
Chris says, take the little train to Marie Antoinette's little village. Yes, I think I will. I have my ticket ready for that. Ron says, if we're done with the hygiene scene, I'm gonna go eat a burger now. Yeah, I think I read out stories about hygiene. Just to set the context of how it would smell. Just put yourself in that place. I think that's a proper way of experiencing Versailles. And then eat a burger, as Ron is doing. So they're paying tribute to The ancient Greeks. I mean, ancient Romans. Hey Sally, nice to see you here. Welcome.
Reflecting the light of the sun.
Lizzie, thank you so much for a $20 super chat. That's so kind of you. $20. Thank you so much, Lizzie. And Chris says this is Sun God. Yeah, hello Sally. This is Tanita says, look at all that gold. No wonder the poor people revolted. Yeah. There was So unfortunately, during this time of the 1600s, 1700s, the largest disparity of wealth in all of modern history was during that time. It was a gigantic disparity of wealth. It was really only concentrated with less than 1% of the people. And that led to the huge issues of the civil uprisings that would turn into revolutions. That's actually happening today. That disparity of wealth is getting dangerously close to the levels that was happening during the reign of Versailles, which is very interesting to think about. Yeah, you can read more about that. There's a great writer called Douglas Rushkoff. No, there's a great documentary. He talks about this as well, but there's a great documentary I would recommend on Netflix called Capital in the 21st Century. If you want to learn more about that, that's very interesting. Michael says, fun fact, I fell asleep on the Palace of Versailles twice. Once on the steps that led down to the courtyard and the gardens, and then right next to the pond where they had swan boats. I guess that's a good place for a nap. Here's a fireplace. Teresa says, I have to go teach. Thank you so much for tuning in, Teresa. This is the Salon de Mars. The god of war. Ooh, here we got Jesus. I was wondering where Jesus was. Does each room have a color scheme? It seems like it, yeah. Each room does have a color scheme. Ron says, is there an urban bench we can test? Unfortunately, the benches are roped off. I would love to test them. They might not be too comfortable though, because cushions die over time. You know, they lose their springs or whatever they were made with. They lose the bounciness. So I think those cushions are probably very dead at this point. So probably is not a very comfortable bench. Cynthia says, this is amazing, thank you. Beautiful thing to wake up to. Oh, I'm so glad I can take you here. Look at the chandeliers. Islam says there's 2,300 rooms. There are 2,300 rooms here, yeah. beautiful chandelier. They have bathrooms there now, says Ron? No. No. No bathrooms. They want to maintain historical accuracy. So no bathrooms, just buckets. In order to, maintain a historical accuracy, they lay a few buckets downstairs, and they have some bottles of perfume, and that's it. That's it. No toothpaste, no sink, nothing. That'd be very funny. But no, yeah, there are bathrooms, and they're big. There's sufficient bathrooms. Oh, bed chambers. This is the Salon de Mercure. I just noticed that this is basically one gigantic railroad apartment. In New York City, people don't know railroad apartments means that all the rooms are adjoining together. So you have to walk across one room in order to get to the other room. So, I don't know, that kind of sucks, I think. If I'm gonna have a gigantic bed chamber with a huge depiction of the sun god right on top of it in gold gilt with huge canopy and massive ceilings with a gigantic fireplace, I'd rather have privacy. I don't want people walking through my room to get to the other room. Now let me know your thoughts.
There's a pretty big wings with the feathers on the turrets. Oh yeah.
Tamara says, I wonder about the paintings losing their vibrancy. Sometimes they're restored, I think. And I think some rooms are kept darker on purpose. Let me zoom in on the clock. And Justine says the Oregon would have been freezing. Yeah, so part of these, there's an official name for it, but the canopy with the bed sheets, with the sheets, that was meant to hold in the heat. So that was one way to maintain a bit of heat. The bed is so high that it requires a stepping stool, or a pillow in this case, to get up to it. Bed. Another painting of King Louis XIV. Nightbot, unfortunately, still telling the weather of Nice, which is 9 degrees Fahrenheit, but here in Versailles, 20 kilometers away from Paris, it is a very chilly 69 degrees Fahrenheit.
I miss the hot summer weather already. Ooh, light. Oh, here we're getting to the place. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hall of Mirrors. We're already starting to see mirrors right over here. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the most famous rooms in all of Versailles. This, well, as we can see all the selfies, the Hall of Mirrors. This is the room in which a treaty took place that later on the Germans used as an excuse to go into war that led to the death of, what was it, 70 million people. Because right here is where they signed the Treaty of Versailles, along President Woodrow Wilson, the British Prime Minister, and a few other people. They all signed here the Treaty of Versailles in order to, you know, make Germany pay for the war that they started. I think it's rather fair. If you start a war, it's like going to a court case. If you sue someone and you lose that case, you have to pay the legal fees. I think the same thing applies to war, and that's what they did. So they made Germany pay. The thing is, the amount was so gigantic and Germany couldn't sustain that by the time of the late 1920s, the government that took control of the Big H and the Big N party ended up blaming that treaty, saying that it was unfair. And it was signed right over here. Here's the moment it's signed. Woodrow Wilson right there, American president at the time. Let me know if you can name the other world leaders. Treaty of Peace, the Allied and the Associated Powers in Germany, and the Treaty of France and Great Britain. Signed at Versailles, June 28, 1919. Here's an American cartoon depicting a lot of people, many countries, including within the U.S., thought that the treaty was very harsh. And I think these might be the crowds gathering. No. Apparently these were protesters gathering in front when the treaty was signed. There were a lot of people who disagreed on both sides about the terms of the treaty specifically. So apparently at least some of this crowd is protesters. So Ms. Lobb, thank you so much for letting us know all the names. Wilson of the US, David Lloyd George of Great Britain, George Clemenceau of France, and also Vittorio Orlando of Italy. Thank you so much.
So it's called the Hall of Mirrors because it actually reflects all the windows. So you have the windows here, and it reflects all the windows, allowing a lot of light in this room. And it's just magnificent with all these chandeliers as well. This also says those were the big four. There were more, yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Let's go down here. Susie says a lot of Windex, yeah. So Windex sponsors the, what was the name of the Cloud Gates? I forgot the colloquial nickname of the Chicago one, the Bean. Windex actually sponsors the Bean, and it's clean. I'm not sure Windex actually has a deal with Versailles. There we go, huge windows. Tamara says the couple dancing was perfect. Yeah, it was very nice. Chris and Sands are asking about the train ride. Yeah, the train ride was short. It's only 20 kilometers away. So 30 minutes or less. It was very quick. Very quick. You end up taking the train from the Invalides stop in Paris, which is close to, or closer to the Eiffel Tower. Actually, it's still a bit far, like 20-minute walk. Chris says that's the best selfie in the whole mirrors, yeah. There we go. That's the key to a great YouTube thumbnail. Just look disturbed, shocked, horrified, ecstatic, blissed out. Just anything short of a huge ecstatic experience that you might see with some of the saints. Anything short of what Saint Teresa, for example, not Mary, Mother Teresa, Saint Teresa experience. Anything short of that, that's the key to a great thumbnail on YouTube. The chandeliers just came. Yeah. Very beautiful. You do not want that bottom ball part of the chandelier to fall on your head. I hope it's very sturdily fastened to the rest of the chandelier. That'll be a terrible way to go. Oh, I was at a dance party at the Versailles. Or worse, I was signing a treaty and a huge glass ball fell on my head. Man dies while dancing in Versailles with a glass ball hitting his head. Susie says, I need to work now. I already need to retire. Uh-oh. Someone crossed the rope. Tisk, tisk, tisk. It's funny how certain tourists really push the limits. Cynthia says, 1 year for retirement for me, God willing. Yeah. Uh-oh. I think the same tourist keeps trying to cross the line. Ron says, imagine proposing there and the chandelier fell. yeah, that would be kind of crazy. Susie says, oh, it must be American. Oh no, Susie. Let's not stereotype Americans anymore. Gwen says, take care, safe travels. No, Gwen, where are you going? No, don't go. I'm joking, but thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate that. Wow, these are very faded. Wow. A lot of butts have sat on that cushion over the centuries. Royal butts. Server butts. Footman butts. World leader butts, diplomatic butts. Wow, the list goes on. The odd tourist butt that decided to cross the line. Who knows? Lorraine says smelly ones. Yeah. The early ones, the 1600 butts. Yeah, those were the smelly ones that sat on that. Maybe that's why they're so faded. They probably tried to wash out the stains after years. Susie says, I see hand stitching. Yeah, these are hand stitched. They most likely are, yeah. There was no machinery back then for textiles, aside from maybe looms. But yeah, these were hand stitched. Evelyn says, it's a bad reflection. Yeah, it's not the most perfect mirror. They wanted it to be the perfect mirror. Yeah. I doubt it was better back then. Also, yeah, it's not even. Despite it being a little bit kind of cloudy, it's not even as well. I think that they did that on purpose. Ron says, see more butts also said there. Yeah, indeed. Hey, Chris says, oh, I agree. You could get a little Louis fatigue. We went to Angelina for lunch to break up the day. Yeah. When visiting these places, sometimes it's a fine balance. You don't want to take it too slow where you really fall asleep, or you don't want to go too fast where you miss things. But sometimes I think it's better to prioritize the important rooms and kind of just more quickly go to the rooms in between that you don't care too much about. Unless if you have all the time in the world and come here super early and really decide to take your sweet time. Otherwise, yeah, you can get what's called museum fatigue. which is where you kind of start yawning because you're seeing so much opulence, so much beauty, so much awe-inspiring golden gilded architecture that it just dulls you to sleep. Let's zoom in on the ceiling though. Ron says, "There's anything from the gift shop?" I am so tempted, Ron. There's a great book about the secrets of Versailles. Tempted to get that. There is chalices, glass chalices, that only cost €35 per. Which, yes, I assume you can find cheaper if you go to an antique store. But I think that's the coolest thing. Really cool, full glass chalices. This is a magnificent room. Wow. So glad I came here. So this is my second time here. I previously did another video of Versailles back in 2019. Oh, we have, is that Colombian flag? I assume before the wood was painted to look like this marble, but this is real marble right here. Avalon says magandang hapon. Yes, magandang apo. Salamat po to all the Filipinos in. Oh, it's raining. Should have brought my boots. Hey Panajotis, nice to see you here. Welcome to the live video. Wow. This chandelier is interesting. Look at the glass. It kind of has a purple tint to it. Lilac tint. The chamber of the... This was the chamber confused with Mother Teresa or Saint Teresa. This was the chamber of Mary Teresa, the spouse of King Louis XIV. She was here between 1682 and 1683. Beautiful floral arrangement on the textiles over here. I think there she is. Oh, that looks like a great couch.
Donc, vous voyez le lit de la reine, là aussi c'est le lit de la reine.
Gorder says the museum is a crowded. Yeah, there's like 3 tour groups all next to each other. That's why it keeps getting crowded. But this, before the pandemic, was crowded to the brim. If you can find my live video from 2019, you'll see I barely had space to walk. I think we're gonna get to a place where there's not that much cell phone reception anymore. Mika, nice to see you here. Dawn says about Marie Antoinette. You know, Marie Antoinette used a lot of the village she built nearby. That was the place she really hung out a lot. But I think, are we seeing Marie Antoinette here? Let's see. Yeah, I think this might be her. Live videos in 2019, and I did like a 360 video for patrons. So yeah, I've covered this before, and then I am like the Queen of England, may she rest in peace. I came here 3 times because the first time I came here was with my parents, and we traveled to Paris 2013. Yeah, 2013, summer of 2013. It was really cool to come over here. I have a selfie from that as well. Okay, so we are going to run out of cell phone reception if I go down there. So this is the last room I can show you in the Palace of Versailles. The Palace of Versailles is gigantic. What's open to the public is only a fraction of what you can see. There is about one more wing plus the bedchambers of the Sun King, which are awesome to see. The other wing has the huge paintings of Napoleon and other revolutions and other stuff that has happened throughout French history. And then you have the bedchamber of the Sun King. So I can't show it to you because there's not going to be any cell phone reception there. But the bedchamber of the Sun King, we already saw the bedchamber of the Queen. So you could just imagine the king put his bedchamber right in the center of Versailles on the 2nd floor, which we're on right now, and it's huge. But every single morning they would do this ritual called the rising of the sun. And this guy, Louis XIV, remember the guy who's toothless, short guy, wore high heels, he would gather an audience around him every single morning, nobles, and the nobles would clamor to get inside. Not all of them would be able to fit into the bedroom, because remember, there were like a lot of them. Hundreds, if not up to 1,000 more nobles. So they wanted to get in. So they were vicious about getting an audience with the king as he woke up. Well, there was one of the bedmaids that was with him ever since he was a little kid that would wake him up, and she lived to be very elderly. You know, Louis the 14th the Great lived into his 70s, so you can just imagine how old was his bedmaid. And she would wake him up every morning, and he would get dressed in front of an entire audience of nobles every single morning. You can just imagine how crazy that is. Let me know, would you wake up with the entire audience right in front of you? Burger says, try to see the chapel. Yeah, the chapel is shown towards the beginning of the video. You can check that out. Nebu says no. Susie says yikes, no. Yeah, apparently he was distraught when his maid died. She died a very old woman, and he was already entering elderly age, and she passed away. Apparently he was distraught by that. By that time he lost all his teeth and he couldn't chew anything. So that is a tour of Versailles. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a beautiful palace. Nowadays, this is the interesting thing about architecture, is that sometimes the people who build these buildings, they build gorgeous architecture. They might not live the happiest of lives or the most interesting of lives, but certainly is gorgeous architecture. They built one of the most outstanding palaces in world history. And it's a miracle. It survived 2 world wars. And it's a miracle, a bigger miracle, that it hasn't been turned into a mall. So that is amazing. And it's an even bigger miracle that they did not hire an architect to build a gigantic glass pyramid in front of it. So we've had a few miracles here. And luckily this is still here. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. This was the Palace of Versailles, about 1.5 wings out of 3 wings that you can see while walking around the tourist area. Next up at 3 p.m., I'll be back outside to show you the gardens in the pouring rain. Everyone keep being awesome and always keep while it's pouring. Au revoir, mes amis.